Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of your Handmade Business Television with Academy of Handmade. I'm Sharon Fain, along with co-director Isaac Watson over here, and we are going to discuss everything #MakerLife in our ongoing YHB TV video series. So this month's theme has been 80s movies, and today is Ghostbusters and letting go of the ghosts in your business. So I'm pretty excited about that. What?
I said, don't cross the streams.
I personally am pro favoring the most recent Ghostbusters All Ladies edition. Kate McKinnon was hilarious. So yes, let us know in the chat maybe which Ghostbusters you prefer, the original all dude, super sexist one, or the fun, lighthearted, all female version.
I have to add that there's a place in my heart for the old one, because that's just the one I grew up watching and I loved Ghostbusters. However, the remake was phenomenal, like really, really well. Like it was the best done it possibly could have been.
Right? Because it was, I feel like it's such, like when you go back and like revisit the old movie, it's like such a thin, campy like story anyways. It's not like there's you know, whatever. So the story itself, I feel like is whatever, but I feel like those women made it hilarious. And I feel like the Chris Hemsworth character, Kevin, it was just like the dumb dude. Oh, that was so great. Stroke of genius. But Kate McKinnon's character, she's so good. I want to see her in everything. So anyways, let us know which one you prefer. But just to let you know that I have to tell you that today's episode of YHB TV is brought to you by Jumpstart Your Handmade Business, which is our signature evergreen program that we're going to be doing a launch for here soon, talking about what's in the program, but also it's evergreen, but anyone who's been in the program still gets to do our day of like hot seats and other stuff that we're going to do. So stay tuned for more information on that. But if you buy it now, you still get all of that stuff. So might as well just buy it now and start in on the program right now. Isaac and I have met thousands of makers over the years, and we've noticed there tends to be one major thing that makes it hard to progress, which is getting clarity and defining your roadmap to success. And that is everything that is about that program. So click on the button below for more information about Jumpstart. Whether you're a first-time maker, business, or a seasoned veteran, our self-guided program helps you grasp the big picture of your business by setting goals, knowing your numbers, and honing in on the right resources for the right solution. So yeah, before we start, because we get into the meat of everything, we have been doing little make it hot takes, I guess. Not really episode recaps, because we're mostly just giving our opinions of it and assuming that you watched it. So this week was very sad because our friend and the most amazing crafter I've ever met, I don't know, Robert Mahart, he's at least one of the most amazing persons I've ever met. He got off the show. Spoiler alert. I mean, if you didn't see it already, I'm sorry. It was 3 days ago, so.
Too bad.
Too bad. It's all over Instagram, guys. Everyone already knows this. But yeah, he's off the show. And I'm really bummed. And I think it's a travesty. I think he could have won. And I have a bone to pick with this show, Isaac. Because the thing that I do not like about this show, in their attempt to make it feel like less of a competition, I feel like the rules are completely ambiguous. And I have no idea what the judging criteria is, none of this stuff. And I feel like it's very much based on the whims of the judges, and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's very loosey-goosey. I feel like criticism one week can be a compliment the next. They don't seem to be
My favorite criticism, arbitrary criticism, is, ooh, I've seen that on Etsy. And then it's like, ooh, I've seen that on Etsy.
Yeah, exactly. Is that a point in favor or a point against? It's both, apparently. But yeah, there are no clear rules. I mean, they set out with the task at hand, but there's no. I mean, you had like the Faster Craft Challenge. This episode was, had the added element of you have to use 3 of these 5 items in this box, and everybody has the same items, which means they are all using them in different ways, and so that's kind of cool. But as far as like what makes it good or not, there's no hard and fast. And I think that they, on some level, have done that intentionally because it's less about the competition than it is with other shows like this. But at the same time, and I know that you have a hard time with this, Sharon, having no rules means it's hard to be competitive.
I am competitive and I am type A and I really enjoy boundaries. And yeah, I feel like, I feel like it makes that aspect of it makes it hard for me to, when they send someone home, be like, okay, that was the right decision. Like sometimes it's pretty clear who was the right decision. Like when the lady that had stabbed herself and blood all over her needlework was sent home. Like I get that. Like that was a sloppy craft. I get it when it's about sloppiness, and we are now not getting into sloppiness or well finished. We are now getting into I think very arbitrary tastes and aesthetics, and I don't like it. I don't like it, Isaac, because it's like there's no like, this is what an Easter door should look like. Who's to say what an Easter door should look like? Simon Doonan apparently is going to tell you, and it needs to not. It needs to be busier. Apparently, can't just have one cute goose up there.
Well, and I think that is a criticism of his own perspective from a retail display standpoint. That's his career, right? I feel like, a door front or a stoop display for a holiday is not going to be the same. It's not going to need to achieve the same things as a retail display. So I think his standard of measure is a little bit skewed toward something flashy and
I mean, that's just his aesthetic, right? Like he wears these like velvet suits and all this stuff, and that's obviously not the aesthetic of Robert. And so I feel like based on that, and based on that, somebody else, I'm not going to name names, made a teacher leprechaun porch, and it was okay. So
yeah, and so 2 things. One, the whole 1-2 punch they did on elimination, where they were like, this person just didn't hit the originality, and then they like cut to Joe's face, and she's like about to cry, and then they're like, and it's Robert. Like that was just mean.
Yeah.
But the other completely unrelated fact, you mentioned Simon's velvet jackets. I happen to have a velvet jacket that I've owned for like 10 years. And so I'm just saying, like,
well, maybe we'd also describe you as a little bit flashy, Isaac. Maybe.
Oh, well, thank you.
If you put that jacket on and just sit in judgment of people's crafts, is that what you do?
Maybe next week I'll just come on in my velvet jacket and a calico shirt and just pretend to be Simon Doonan for an episode. How's that sound?
I like it. I like it a lot. And we'll get judgmental Isaac on next week.
I don't know if I have enough zhuzh for that, but
yes, he does have some panache that is definitely hard to replicate. Even if Offerman tries to this week, he did not succeed.
Anyway.
All right. Let's dig into business ghosts. Letting go of the ghosts that haunt the things that haunt you in your business. Start us off, Isaac.
Well, I think this is fitting, because the stores have already been putting out the Halloween stuff, but also because Halloween was featured so heavily in this episode of Making It. So I feel like it kind of all makes sense. But we kind of came up with 5 different things that could be haunting your business, or ways that you might be haunted in your business that we want to address. And the first one is really being haunted by our own stories and the stories we tell ourselves. And I think what that means to me is that sometimes we can encounter a mental block, or we tend to learn or to lean on our personality traits as excuses or crutches for not pursuing something or not trying something. There's a lot of self-criticism and self-doubt that can come up as a creative person. And I think that one of the biggest ghosts that we can try to combat with a creative business is to move past those mental blocks and accept that it is worth trying, and your business is bigger than just you, and so you should not be the one holding it back.
Exactly. I think we can create these stories, especially like as like a means of protection. Like, oh, I can't do this, or, oh, I'm not going to ever be good at this, or that's not my type of business. And to prevent you from saying yes to certain things out of like a security. So I definitely think that is for sure a business ghost that can haunt you. I think similar to that is like getting haunted by past experiences where you've been like burned on something and then you just like outright dismiss it for all time. So you kind of like let one experience like define all of your possibilities going forward. And so it psychs you out or trips you up later when you're trying again could be really successful. I think this happens with, like doing a particular craft show or like taking sort of maybe a risk on something, and then you've just, putting your toe in the water, and then you've sort of just like, okay, well, this is now decided I can't ever do craft shows or this particular craft show or something.
Yeah, I think I've used this example before, but it just keeps coming back to my mind. And I think it's a really great example to share is when I interviewed Jen Crow for the podcast last year, she talked about this and this kind of breakthrough that she had where she was telling herself this story that that her business wasn't right for wholesale because she had some bad experiences at trade shows trying to do them by herself. And she had convinced herself that she did much better connecting directly with her customers, and that because wholesale was a step removed, that wasn't a right fit for her. But eventually she got to the point where she thought, wait a second, am I just cheating myself out of this because of this experience I had? And so she went back into it and decided to try wholesale again, and ended up being really successful at it and relearning to enjoy it in a different way from selling directly to her customers. And so she's been able to find a good balance between wholesale and direct to retail as a result. So I think that's a great example. Sharon put a link to episode 17 of the podcast in the chat for those who want to check it out.
Yeah. I think this is a big business ghost. I think we can get haunted by money. Money is very spooky sometimes. And I think there's a lot that goes into getting haunted by money, which is our own feelings of like being bad at money or not knowing how to manage it properly. Like, I think there's one that like we can, and that's sort of like a story we tell ourselves, which is like, I'm no good at money, or like I'm bad at it. But some of us just are kind of bad at money sometimes. Like we overspend or we don't really pay attention to things. Another one though, I think is us not being afraid of the unknown and sort of like us feeling inadequate when it comes to money. I get that those two things can be sometimes hand in hand, but I think two of those things are huge. And I think the way you tackle that business ghost is you just head on, learn and deep dive and like sort of like get that discipline. And you have to really like put out those stories out of your head. You know, you really have to stop letting the past dictate your money future. Anyways.
Yeah, I've gone through similar things like with myself and my own relationship with money. I made a number of poor financial decisions in my youth, and had bad credit and just was terrible. I would just spend because I really like spending money. And I basically just convinced myself that I was terrible with money. And it wasn't until probably in the last 5 or 6 years that I really felt like I was learning how to work with money and how to think about money in a different way. Thanks in part to my husband's example, because he's really great with money. Thanks in part to, you know, working through starting a business and doing things like that. And so I had to just kind of like retrain myself and convince myself that I'm not innately bad with money. I just have a bad history with it, and I can change that because the history is not the same as the future.
Yep. And if it's like based on a habit, then you break the habit, right? Like there's definitely ways to like bust that business ghost without, yeah, like I it's definitely something that you can change and let go of. Like it's not something that you have to let it haunt you. So, one other one is sort of, I think, like, financial FOMO, is that we see other businesses and are sort of like haunted by the decisions they've made and have been like, oh, what if I had made that decision? And I feel like that can kind of get to be a recipe for regrets and really, you know, you overanalyzing the perception of someone else's business and then applying it to yours when you don't even really know the full story. And also your businesses aren't the same. So like, there's that too.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say like, it's not just that your businesses aren't the same, but your money stories could be different. Like, you don't know what their household is like. You don't know what their financial goals are for their businesses compared to yours. There's just a lot of unknowns there. So really want to make sure that we're not comparing ourselves to each other.
There's a lot of times where like people have financial backing of family, well, it's usually family, not friends, but family that like you don't even know about, that there's investments that they've made into them or have, you know, allowed them to borrow in order to leverage a big order or something like that you just might not be privileged to the same way. So I feel like it's really easy to look at someone else and be like, well, of course, you know, they're successful, but, you know, yeah. And then beat yourself up for it. So,
yeah. Okay. So the fourth ghost in your business, we feel can really haunt you with stubbornness. Stubbornness can haunt you in your business. And the reason we think that this is important is because sometimes we get so stuck and convinced that something is the answer that if it's not working, we forget to let go, or we don't want to let go because maybe it means failure, or maybe it means we've lost something after taking a risk. But that stubbornness can actually be really detrimental in your business because it can prevent you from advancing when you really need to. Sometimes you just need to say, you know what, this isn't working. I need to move on because I'm going to have a higher likelihood of getting past it and finding another solution if I do that now, rather than trying to, like, you know, push through as hard as I can against a brick wall.
I see a lot of people who have committed to something and have like thrown good money and time into it and then just keep throwing it good money after bad at some point. Like you gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them, Isaac.
Preach, Sharon.
So I think there's some times where it's like you have to cut your losses, and it's really hard to do that sometimes because you have invested it and you're going to lose. But like you have to look at the bigger scheme of a business, which is you're going to lose sometimes, but you're also going to win, and just gotta like accept that a loss is gonna happen at some point. You're not always gonna make perfect business decisions, and you're gonna have to pay for it sometimes, and you gotta move on.
Exactly. And that is not to say that you shouldn't encounter any friction in your business, because friction and challenge is what helps us work through these things. But you know, banging your head against a brick wall is not productive.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard to know the difference between when is something not working and when am I just not trying hard enough to implement something that should be implemented. But there's wisdom in knowing the difference between those two things for sure. The next and the last business ghost is haunted by what might have been. And I think this is a bit of FOMO. I think there's a lot of regret sometimes that this sort of goes back to other things, but like you have made a decision, you saw someone else also presented with the same opportunity, make a different decision, and things turned out really well for them. And because you said no and they said yes, you somehow feel like you're constantly regretting that decision. And feeling like, my business could be in this different place. And it's like, it's probably true, but you have to like learn the lesson and move on. You got to go start making the opportunities happen instead of thinking about what might have been all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Regret is not something that should be wallowed in. Mistakes have been made. They always will be. And considering what you could have done differently may be able to inform future choices to an extent, but if they're holding you back from actually moving beyond it and getting past it, that's just going to continue haunting you going forward.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Those are our business ghosts that we've talked about. So one of the ways that we think busting business ghosts can happen is through the Jumpstart program, which is really taking a lot of time to look at your business specifically and realizing that there are different types of businesses, there are different types of outcomes for a business, and that not everyone's on the same path, and that is totally okay, and you have to do what is right for your business. So if you're interested in that, the link is below as well too. Next week, what are we talking about next week, Isaac?
We're going to talk about a back to the future of your business. Continuing our...
Get the DeLorean fired up, guys. We're going for a journey.
We're going to hit 88.8, 88.1?
Whatever it was.
I remember what it is now. 1.21 gigawatts. I do remember that. Anyway, I do want to just call out something Heather said in the chat before we sign off. She says, I think it can be hard to know when to move on because you do have to give some business strategies time to work. So true. But I agree that we have to develop wisdom, and it's hard won sometimes. And that is a delicate balance of knowing when to move on, when to keep pushing through. And I think that's in a lot of ways, that's one way that your community, I mean, we talked about support networks last week. And that's how your community can help, by learning from others' experiences, by, checking in with those people who you find to be mentors or peers, to help you work through that, because you don't have to go it alone, and you don't have to make all those decisions on your own.
Yeah, it's true. Other people's experiences can tell you, like, do you need to just keep pushing through this, or do you actually need to give it up because this should not be taking as long as it is? Like, there's something wrong, or tweak, or whatever it is. But yeah, for sure. All right, next week we are talking about back to the future of your business, and it's kind of going to be about systems and planning. And is that right, Isaac? This is going to be Isaac's session mostly, guys. This is his.
Yeah, we are definitely going to emphasize systems in this. In particular, I mean, this fits in really well with back to school, which is happening right now. Some people are already back to school, others are, it's imminent, but this tis the season to be getting out of summer gear and into school gear or work gear. And so I think this is a great time, especially because the new year is so distant in the past, to kind of reinvigorate ourselves and think again about the future of our business and make sure that we are getting back to thinking forward and not just getting caught up in the day-to-day.
For sure, for sure. All right, guys. Anything else that you have questions about or want to talk about, or business ghosts or otherwise, definitely pop into the Facebook group and let us know too. But until then, we will see you next week, Thursday, same time, same place. Bye.
Bye.